This is an enormously important year for the Wisconsin Badgers football team. What happens if they succeed? Rajiv, what happens if they fail?
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, late edition, going live. Appreciate everybody that's going to tune in. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first offer. I'm Ryan Herrings, your host, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making this one of your first listens every single day and being an everydayer. Today's episode, we are talking about why this season is so crucial, what happens going forward if it goes well, and what happens I don't even want to say the next part out loud. What happens going forward if this season is another step backwards or no improvement? I think we start, though, why is the season so important? Because I've been thinking about this for a while, and you and I have talked about this off air a little bit. This season is critical for the Wisconsin Badgers football team, in my opinion, to show improvement, to get better, not to win 10 games, 9 games, compete for the Big Ten. It is critical to get better this season. Rajiv, where are you at on this one?
Man, you said it right. This literally is critical as it gets. We were 5-7 last year. We haven't been that since 2001. We all know about the bull streak that just ended, and there's just so much history behind this program and what Barry Alvarez did in turning it around. And excuse me, and you can look at it from so many different perspectives. Like, just look at the fans. Like, starting with us. Like, what do we think? I mean, having suffered one of the worst seasons we've had in many Badger fans like fandom, and missing a bowl game, losing to Iowa, losing to Minnesota, just every trophy game gone. And think about the donors. Think about recruiting players. Think about keeping players in the transfer portal era. What I'm worried about and why it's so important is this conference is now 18 teams. And I am afraid of Wisconsin, honestly, getting lost in the mass of mediocrity in this conference, because that's really what it is. You've got the upper echelon, you've got the lower ones, which we're kind of teetering on, and then you've got everyone in the middle. I don't want to be in the middle. We were never in the middle than before. Like, we haven't been that middle team. We've always been a team that's 9-10 wins every year, going to a solid bowl game. And if we're going to be the team that all of a sudden doesn't do that, that's a really, really big loss. And you can very quickly lose fortune, and then all of a sudden you're stuck in that area of mediocrity. That's what I'm really concerned about. We can't get stuck. We have to be a team that's better and that's actually competing to win the title.
Yeah, Steve says not only to boost the confidence, but to keep the good recruiting classes in the future. I know you mentioned recruiting. That's a huge component to this. You have to it's a lot easier to recruit kids when you win. Like, that momentum is easier to maintain when you're winning and you're building excitement. And when players come to your home games, there's an excited crowd there. Like, this all ties together. And you mentioned it. Wisconsin's never been that team that, was in that muck. Even when they dropped down to that 7-5 occasional year, like Bielema had one, Christ had one, Barry had a couple, it was always a quick return. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're talking about here. And we didn't drop to 5-7 outside of, like, I think a Barry Alvarez type year one time very often. But this is why this is so important, because one dot on a plot does not make a trend. 2 dots starts to make a trend. You have another 5-7 season. Then you start to build a downward trend where it feels harder to get out of. This could still be an aberration. Last year could still just be a one-off. We figured some stuff out. Longo was an issue. The young guys weren't old enough. And now we're back to where we want to be, which is projecting upwards in that upper middle tier of the Big Ten, at least. That's why this year is so important, because if you do well this year, you can, not that it makes last year okay, because you and I were both alive after the Iowa game and we talked about it. Not that it makes it okay, but it could make it a one-off. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's why this year is so important, because you have to reinforce the idea that was a one-off for this program.
And you have to think about it from where college football is as a sport right now. Like, so there are times when other schools have been down and they've gone down for a couple years and they come back up. This is like the worst time for this to happen, because we're competing constantly to keep players, as you mentioned, again, recruiting, right? So there's that piece of it. We're happy with his recruiting classes so far, but can he keep them? But then you have this element of revenue generation that is so critical. So right now it's donors, which those are going to fall if you have another 5-7 season. But also if the settlement goes through and the university can actually use its own revenue, but there's that piece of that too. If fans don't want to go to games because they're not seeing the final product, you're going to lose money from all facets of revenue production, not just like the big stuff. You're going to lose all across the board. And then you're competing with all these other schools that don't have that problem. Now you're really behind. Now, like you've got to cross so many bridges and you've got to fix so many issues to be able to get back up to relevance. Like it's a really critical point. And it's not only because of where Wisconsin is, but where college football is. And that really can't be lost in all this either.
Yeah, that's a great point. And people look to Indiana. I mean, look no further than Indiana. Success brings in more money. And you have that breakout year last year. Kurt Signetti comes in there. Rourke is the quarterback. They get to the playoffs. And who do they get at quarterback this year? Fernando Mendoza, a big-time transfer guy. They don't get that if they didn't win last year. You have to win to get the upper-tier talent now because that's where they're not going to see a return on investment if you're not winning. And it's no different than any business, right? Stock investors aren't going to pump money into something that feels like it's sinking. You need to win to build that, and you need to have donors and money to win in college football now. So you're right. You're right on the precipice of this changing landscape in college football, and you're really showcasing the worst version of Wisconsin that we've seen in maybe 20 years at this really critical juncture. It's why it has to get better this year.
Yeah, and I think above all for me, just as a fan and us, of course, and the people listening, it's like we've always been that program that people can look up to, that people want to be like. Right? Like there's a lot of teams in this conference. You look at the Indianas until last year, the Purdue's, the Illinois, like the Northwesterns, that have always wanted sustained high floor success. We have been the definition of that for the last 30 years. And, you can look at records of the last 20, not obviously the last 5 or so, but before that, like we were one of the most successful programs in the nation. Had we had a 12-team playoff for the last 20 years, we'd have been in it a half a dozen times at least. Like it's just, we can't not do that. We can't have an upward trajectory. And look at Nebraska, look at the state of that program for so long. And now they're slowly building their way out. But exactly. There you go. Matt Van Grinson. So what you're saying is you don't want Wisconsin to wind up as Nebraska. Absolutely. And and now more than ever, there's no Big Ten West to bail us out, man. Like the Big Ten West was a bailout. We could have a bad year, but we were still probably going to be okay. Now, you've got so much competition in the toughest. It's a Big Ten, the SEC, and then everybody else is lagging way behind. I so badly do not want to end up in a team that's just not relevant and that people make fun of every year and that, lose to Minnesota and get trucked by Iowa. I'm not signing up for that. That's not why. We can't have that as Badger fans. We can't.
Yeah, it'd be hard. You know what? The other one, it would just be heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like it would be, as a Badger fan, and you and I are of similar age, growing up watching the quality, the consistent excellence of this program, it would be heartbreaking as a fan because we live in an era now where attention spans are this quick. You shift so quickly. You're going to lose entire generations of fans, man. Like, kids just aren't going to get into it. You're going to see a long-term effect if you can't build some excitement and some winning and some program success where, kids come out and they really get jazzed up about the program because you're winning 9 games. Occasionally you're beating a big program. I bring my kid, I'll tell you right now with the attention spans of kids, of children, if I bring my kid to a Wisconsin game to get waxed 42-10, he may never watch Wisconsin again in his life.
You're going to lose the ability to make him a fan. I'll give you another one. Like Chris McIntosh took over as athletic director and made a really big, powerful move in bringing in Luke Fickell. And so there's a lot of you talk about why it's so vital. Like it's vital for him and his career too. Obviously, we're going to get into Fickell in the next couple segments, but Chris McIntosh went against what a lot of people's initial thoughts were, which was take Jim Leonard and make him the coach. Like, let's keep this train, this high floor train moving. He took a big risk and he took a big swing. And if he strikes out, this season 3 strikes potentially, and all of a sudden now it's the entire athletic department is under question.
Yeah. Can I take that thought? Cause it's a really good thought. Can I extend it one more train platform? You're on the railroad tracks. I want to push it one more platform down. It might also be the last time Wisconsin takes a big swing. right? Just
Gosh, that's a good point.
You took a big swing, because Wisconsin has a pedigree to do it. We're going to elevate this program. Gosh, it didn't work. We're just going to kind of be okay being okay now. There's an element of people, and I've talked to people that have said this to me directly. If this doesn't work out, Wisconsin is going to pull back a little bit. Like it, for a lot of reasons, man, this season matters.
And that's scary because like this is when this started, the whole thought was like, this is how we go to the next level. I mean, you and I have said this many times, like Barry Alvarez, Brett Bielema, like they built Paul Chris, they built a really good foundation in the sense that we were a team that we were never going to be the Ohio State, Michigan. And maybe we never will be, but at least this gave us the thought of, hey, this could be our step up, right? This could be the Clemson. I said the Clemson move. I said Clemson a lot. This could be our Clemson type move. And it doesn't look like it's there yet, obviously.
We're going to take a break there, come with our friends of the show, but then we're going to come back and talk about, okay, let's say this thing works. What does that look like in our eyes? And then what could that lead to the following years? This is going to be the fun segment, Rajiv. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. Today's episode brought to you by our great friends over at Gametime, a service that I personally use. Like sometimes people will tell you, oh, I've used this service or it's great. As a bug flies around my head, I have literally used this on my way to a Braves game. The tickets we had fell through. I've told this story, but I'm telling you, on my phone, getting the tickets on the way to the stadium, I had them before we pulled in, before the Uber dropped us off. It was that simple. And we got literally great seats, great prices. Me and my boy got to watch a Braves win, and we're both Braves fans, so that was awesome. There's no better way to get tickets, fast, easy, simple, efficient. And tickets to everything. Because Rajiv, I mean, you and I, we're not just Badger fans. Let's go watch some Broadway show together, dude. Let's go do some theater together. Let's go live life together.
NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs happening right now. Go Pacers, go Golden Knights. I mean, there's so much out there, and they've got such a great offer.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Gametime. Download the Gametime app today. Use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Go get Gametime. Go live more life experiences. Okay, let's get into this, Rajiv. Let's say, I want us to really quickly start and not dive into this extensively because we both kind of talked about this. When we say this year's better, this year showed success, it showed progress, quick synopsis, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, so for me, it's not just about wins and losses. It's something about performance. It's being stronger up front, being able to stop the run, being able to run the ball, being able to have some effective offense. And as I said a lot in the last few days, when we play like we did against Oregon, we actually win those games, right? Because we have like a proper offense that's actually going to be functional, and you can't just get trucked by, you can't get destroyed by your rivals. That cannot happen. I don't care what, I know we're going to lose to Ohio State, the Alabamas of the world, the Oregons of the world, Minnesota, Iowa, those things that we can't get beaten down by those teams. So first and foremost is performance. And yes, the win total has to increase, but we're, as Badger fans, like all the people listening to this, like you all watch these games. Like we know when we've improved, and we're going to be able to tell, and we're going to be able to see it.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I mean, I agree with everything you said there. I would add, you got to get to a bowl. Like if I'm going to set some minimum things, you said the win record should be better. That just means you have to get to a bowl. You have to get to a bowl. It means win one more game. You got to do that. And I think you got to win one of your tougher games, man. And it doesn't have to be Ohio State. It doesn't have to be Oregon. But maybe it's Iowa, right? Maybe it's Illinois. Maybe it's Indiana. All teams that are going to be tough. Indiana and Illinois are ranked coming into the season. You have to beat somebody that can stack up with you and force you to execute at a high level, to be physical, to play 4 good quarters of football. So get to a bowl, play 4 good quarters of football consistently, to your point, and then beat one of the teams that's a toss-up. It doesn't even have to be an elite game. So I think we're on very similar paths here. So let's talk a little good news here. Let's say this thing goes well. They win 7 games, 8 games, whatever it is, but they show up, they're competitive, they look cohesive, the offense looks better. This could lead to cascading effects here, Rajiv. The recruiting starts to pay off even more. Those young players start to fill in. You start to see the vision, and it gives you something you can sell to future recruits. This works. There's excitement. And again, we talked about it. I think you get more donor support. I think money starts to increase a little bit. Where are you at if this thing goes well this year?
Well, the first thing you look at is, and I just pulled it up so I could remember, is the 2026 schedule. And you look ahead to future schedules. This schedule is brutal. We all know it. We've talked about it. Let me run down the Big Ten opponents in 2026. Michigan State, Rutgers, Minnesota, USC, Iowa, Nebraska, Penn State, Purdue, UCLA. You don't see Michigan. You don't see Ohio State. You don't see Oregon. think about that, right? Like that is the first thing you think of, and you think playoff. We are now in a world of a 12-team playoff where, again, we would have got in several times. Well, I expect us to be in that playoff, not necessarily right away, but with these types of schedules, you can now look ahead and say, we can become a playoff team. That's the first thing that I think about if this season goes well, because now all of a sudden you already said that the money, the recruits, you keep the recruiting classes that we've built, and you can actually go on a run and now realize you get yourself out of that mid in the Big Ten. You have a year like Indiana did last year. All of a sudden, you're sitting in the football playoff. Who knows? You win a couple of games. What does that do for your recruiting? What does that do for everything else around you? The money, the sky's the limit and beyond that. And now you're actually in a competition where 12 teams have a chance to win a title. We've never had that in football. You could actually see a path to win a title. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but now with a 12-team playoff, it opens the door wide for that to happen. And that's just such a big thing for us now.
Yeah, Rick says must get to a bowl. Yeah, you're right. If this season goes the way we hope it does, you build so much momentum going into that next offseason, into an easier schedule. And by the way, what is on this roster? A bunch of young players, a bunch of young guys we like. So if you build that momentum, you go into the offseason feeling good, then you really could springboard into that next year and win 8-9 games, maybe even more if something happens. The other thing, you look at what's happening around this program. There's a new training facilities coming into place, really gorgeous stuff. There's a lot of things coming together. They just replaced, the turf in Camp Randall. They really like this potential quarterback room that they have. Young quarterbacks, Carter Smith, Ryan Hopkins, if he lands here, I think has a chance to be a dude. You start to pair some of this really young, exciting talent with new updated facilities and some momentum heading into easier schedules. You flip what you've done is you flipped the narrative. You've completely flipped the narrative around the program if this season goes well. And it's no longer, you no longer have alumni on Twitter saying, oh, woe is us. Where's the fullback? You no longer have the narrative of should have stuck with Jim Leonard. You no longer have the narrative of, I can't believe we're in this spot. You start to talk about possibilities again, which leads to everything else coming together.
And which leads to, as you mentioned in the first segment, taking big swings. All of a sudden, if it hits and the Luke Fickell experiment works, then whenever it's time, and that time isn't now, but whenever that's time to take a swing in the basketball program or whatever, it's like we can make those things. We can be an upper echelon athletic department. And if the settlement happens, then you have the revenue sort of balances out, and the amount of money that we can spend on NIL and things like that become more equalized, and we can use the sort of benefits that we already have financially. And then that takes a step up, but you can take those swings now. And it actually means that we have a chance to be what I've said many times, that Clemson effect. We have that chance to be that, well, who are these guys? Is it all of a sudden a perennial playoff team? I mean, I realize I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's the kind of ceiling that Luke Fickell has. He took Cincinnati to the playoff. We've talked about this. Like, that's bananas, a 14 playoff, by the way. So you got to see the big picture. And if he's successful, literally the doors open up. The doors they open wide.
Yeah. Can we also just talk selfishly for a second? We have podcasts that talk about the Badgers. Like, just selfishly, a good year would do so much for the shows, the enjoyment level. Because I got to tell you, man, I think you kind of know this. People in the chat might know it. It's hard to do shows after you get beat 42-10 to Iowa. Mm. This is a selfish take on my part. I get that. But it's real for me.
Yeah, man, like the reaction shows can get pretty grueling, but it's like, just imagine, like, and you look, you've seen us a couple years ago when we won the Axe. You saw how excited Justin and Ryan and I were. Like, imagine that all the time. Like, I mean, can you imagine a happy Justin all the time? That's like a dream come true for all of us. Like,
it's a unicorn. That thing doesn't exist.
But it's like, if that happens, yeah, it's just fun for everybody. Like the everything we do is just more fun, and everything that the fans listen to so much. I mean, even like when I'm for podcasts, like not Badger stuff, I love listening when we win. I hate listening when we lose for others. It's like, it's tough, man. Like, you just don't want to have to relive that horror anymore. And above all, there's one thing. Can we shut Minnesota up? That'd be really good too. I would love to be able to just say, just sit down, little redheaded stepchild, and calm yourself. Like, you're nothing, we're everything. And we need to put them back in their place.
Yes. We need the Axe. Yes, 100%. All right. I think we painted this pretty well. The potential excitement and kind of cascading effect if this thing goes well. Let's flip it a little bit. Let's say this season does not go well. It's just like last year, or potentially even worse. What happens next? What does it look like for the future of this program? We're going to talk about that next, Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. Again, great friends of the show, which that's all we have over at Amazon Fire TV. Listen, sometimes I travel. Sometimes I have to go places. I have work travel, hotels, and you can't bring your Xbox with you. Amazon Fire TV has solved that. It's also an Xbox. Right now, with the Amazon Fire TV stick, you can take your Xbox enjoyment, but don't need the console. You just grab your pair of controllers, subscribe, sign into the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. You're going to dive into hundreds of premium titles. EA Sports, College Football 25, Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, the latest technology going across those fastest Wi-Fi networks. You have endless entertainment, 4K streaming, more than 1.5 million movies, TV episodes, and every subscribe service you're ever going to want that you use all the time anyway. Netflix, Prime, Disney Plus, Max, it's all there. So you have an entertainment console all put together. It's incredible, and it's going to be with you wherever you want because it's super portable, incredibly easy to use. Head over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription, compatible controllers required. Available on select devices, including the Fire TV Stick 4K second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second generation, and the Fire TV Cube third generation. All right, Rajiv, I'm going to let you lead this one off. What if this year doesn't go well? What comes next?
I mean, I think that the debate will rage on whether or not Fickell should have a job, which is a very fair debate. And there will be a lot of people. I know there was a comment earlier that mentioned like he's going to get 4 years regardless. And I know there's a lot of people that think that, and they're probably right. I can't really see him getting fired necessarily right away, depending on how bad it is. But like, and yeah, Will Hanna put that up there. I've said it for a year and a half now. Fick, it's 4 full years and Bucky wins double digits in 2026. Yeah, the schedule is pretty nice in 26 and 27, by the way. That's even better. We don't play Notre Dame in 27. It's the discussion will happen. You automatically then think about flipping the program again. And flipping the program means you're going back to square one. You're going to be losing 26 recruits, right? You're going to be looking at ahead of the 27 class, and those are going to look bad. If Fickell does leave, you have a full reset, and then everything just goes, frankly, into the tank. And then you just got to hope that the next big swing is going to work, or you got to hope that Jim Leonard wants to come back, and you talk about that again. Like, it just sets off a chain of events that will be really bad, and it will make for some really, really not fun podcasting.
Yeah. It won't be enjoyable, man, at all. Because ultimately, that's what this community is about. That's what we're Badger fans. You know, we were Badger fans that have microphones, but more than anything, we just want this program to do well, to succeed. And if this year goes backwards or it just stays where it is, because here's the other thing. Fickell's already made the move. He's already replaced his offensive coordinator. There's not like a lot of other things he can do. Like he's going to replace his coordinator again? Is it suddenly we got to get a new defensive coordinator? At that point, it feels like all the wheels are falling off, right? If you have a builder come out building you a house and, you know, a year in, it's not really working. He's like, I'm firing my carpenter. And then another year, it's not really working. He's like, well, my roofer's terrible. The electrician's gone. Eventually you're like, it's not those guys, right? The problem is higher than that. And that's where, if it doesn't work this year, and by work, I mean, if it looks worse or the same, you really got to start to question the hires. You got to start to question the scheme. You got to start to question Luke Fickell very fairly. And that's where you get into we had it earlier from Matt, that's where you start to get into Nebraska territory, where you could cycle coaches and then you never get out of the wandering forest. You're stuck there for a decade.
I think it's important to talk about the degrees of what that looks like, because like there is a situation where the offense has improved, right? Because Grimes clearly is working and you've got better quarterback play. Yet you still lose maybe 6, potentially 7, but hopefully not more than 6 games. And then you're like, well, we didn't really progress. We're still kind of a mid team. Then we get another year because it's an easier schedule. But it's like, I guess if I was going to say to you, Fickell's going to lose his job at the end of this year, what do you think that means that we saw? Like, what does that look like? What is it going to take to get him fired?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the wheel's absolutely falling off. 5 wins doesn't get him fired. 5 wins does not get him fired. No, this is my opinion. And I could be wrong. I'm wrong often. 5 wins does not get him fired, because you can't take a swing like this on a guy, and barring off-field issues, you can't take a swing like this on a guy and give him 3 years. I just don't think you can do that as a program like Wisconsin, where stability and consistency are super important. Because if you bring a new guy in, you're switching everything. You're going to lose recruiting classes. Donors are going to shut it off. You're going to have so much. I guess my bigger point is, why not give him one more year to make sure, right? One more year with his recruits being juniors, an easier schedule just to make sure, because then you can still fire him there. But I would hate to fire a guy a year too early and then get stuck in a cycle of hoping you get the next right guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that like it would really take, but then again, okay, so if we get crushed by Iowa and Minnesota, God forbid that happens, because we don't want to see that again. The pressure will be on. Like there will be a lot of people that say you need to bounce him now. But I just don't see that happening. And that's why I said that the offense needs to show progression, because there definitely is a situation where we could even progress as a team this year and Tressel still loses his job at the end of the season, because there already are some questions about whether his defense is really going to work. Now we've got some better players, better recruits coming in, so maybe that changes, but we could still see tweaks and then it moves forward. But I agree. I think that like it's really going to have to take another just drubbing by our rivals, no real advancement on defensive prowess, and also poor in-game decisions, which we saw a little bit. Like if that continues, then you really just kind of wonder, can he really do it outside of the recruiting? Because that's clearly there.
Yeah, MJ says 3-9 would get him fired. It went like 3-9 would be a disaster. And when you start
3-9 means that even if you beat Middle Tennessee State and Miami, that means you're only getting one more game out of that schedule. Washington, Maryland, Minnesota. I mean, I would agree with this. If he gets 3 wins, I think he's gone.
That's probably where I start to rescind my statement of that. But this is what I consider the wheels falling off. That's why I said for him to get fired, I think the wheels have to absolutely fall off. And 3-9 to me, listen, we can talk hard schedule. And is that a bit of an excuse? Sure. I think it's a reason. I think people sometimes conflate the two. Like it's not an excuse. It's a reason. The schedule's hard. You can't go 3-9 at Wisconsin. I don't care how tough the schedule is. You can't go 3-9 because not every game's Ohio State. Not every game's Oregon. So I think 3-9 gets you pretty close there. Yeah. And MJ also says we fired a coach midseason coming off a 9-4 season. Again, that wasn't Mac's guy. I think that's the difference here. Mac is tied to Fickle. And I think there's going to be more patience because of that. Our ADs always have more patience with coaches and people they bring in.
Yeah, and I think that like with Chris, like you could see, you could very quickly see that it was going in one direction. Everybody knew that, right? Like it was a hap before our eyes. The decisions, the recruiting, everything was falling apart. And there is a scenario that could happen again, but I think it would have to be he's 0-5. He loses to Middle Tennessee, loses to Miami. Then at that point, you're like, okay, we need to cut something, but that's not going to happen. And our roster is way too talented for that to be a thing.
I hope. No, it is. It is. No, I'll do 100%. No, I don't disagree with you at all in there. So that's kind of the thoughts we have. It's kind of where it could go either way. Let's just finish up here. Where do you think it goes? Like right now in this point in time, you and I both trend optimist, something we've both been called out on before. Where are you at right now?
Yeah. So, look, there's a lot of people that, Ryan and I both talked to various people, in and around the program. I just feel like there's a lot of optimism inside as well, which gives me a lot more optimism as a fan. Like there has been improvement with the players, obviously, certainly on the defensive line. Jeff Grimes, I think, really is bringing a breath of fresh air, and you can just kind of see the culture shift and the culture sort of taking hold. I don't think it's going to be a stellar year. I think we will see progression. I think the offense is going to get better. I think the defense is not going to get run over constantly. And we're not going to be super happy with all the results. And we're going to get beat pretty bad by some teams. But we're going to feel at the end of the year, okay, everything's okay. We're back in a bowl. We've had some nice wins. We're moving in the right direction. Now we can look ahead at that 25, 26 class, like, the 24 class maturing. Then you're really like, all right, like we can make a move, because I'm telling you, go to uwbadgers.com, look at the 26 and 27 schedule, and you will understand why there's real optimism, but there has to be progression. I think that happens.
Yeah. Mel Mills says 7-5, but vibes will be better than last year. I think vibes, culture, progression, it all kind of ties in. I will say this. I've had a couple media guys on the show the last couple of days. Jay Kokorowski. I also had another guy coming on they both had pretty similar floors. And Jake was like, I don't know, it's like 3 wins is the floor. And I'm like, oh
Oh.
my gosh. And these guys, I feel like are generally a little, I don't want to say that we're biased, but I think they're looking at it from a slightly different lens. And when he said 3 wins as the floor, I was like, oh man, alive. And he's the guy who's been at half the practices in spring, has a good feel for it. I'm with you though. All that being said, I'm with you. I think it gets better this year. I do. Just because the point, a couple points that I've made that I keep coming back to. Braden Longo was awful last year. He was awful. Phil Longo wasn't the fit. I think you've improved at the OC, and you're not going to have awful quarterback play this year. I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think you're going to have great quarterback play either. But I think you're going to have mid-tier quarterback play, which is a big thing. And you're
what would mid-tier quarterback have got us last year? We would have had 2 more wins.
I think you at least get another win or 2, right? At least. And then here's the thing: if you get another win or 2 and you're in a bowl last year, you and I aren't having this exact conversation right now. It's maybe similar, but it's not the same. And then I also just think it's impossible to once again have the absolute worst defense in the country at hitting the quarterback, at causing TFLs. It's just not going to happen. That's an insane stat, by the way. That's still one of the most ridiculous stats from last year that you could ever think of.
I mean, and we talked about going into last year, the defensive line was a question mark, and it still is a question mark because we haven't seen it perform. But on paper, it looks far better, and it is from everything that we've heard and you've seen practice. Like it's clearly better, and that's a big deal. But let me tell you something: that 3 and floor, yikes! I don't like to hear anyone say that. That's definitely not my floor, but I'm also an optimist. But if a realist is thinking 3 wins, yikes!
What is your floor? Just like we'll finish up here because we're about 30 minutes. But
yeah,
what is your floor right now?
I think my floor legitimately is 5. It could be 4, but with the two games at the beginning, and then Washington and Maryland both at home, I just I feel like Indiana, Illinois. Like I'm not saying we're gonna lose both those. I just think 5 is not that hard to get to, and I mean we were bad last year. We got to 5 with Braden Locke. Like we have Billy Edwards now. We have Danny O'Neal backing him up. We've got Charles Perkins on the D line. We've got Jaden Ballard on the outside. Like we've got Dylan Jones and Darian Dupree and Cade Yakimelli in the backfield. Like there's a lot of pieces. We're returning Preston Zachman and Rico Hallman and Nizier Forkred. We can't be worse than 5 wins, right? The silence.
Yeah, I tell you though, I think at times, and I'm guilty of this. This is not me kind of picking on you. I'm guilty of this. At times we overrate our returning pieces. And this is another thing I was thinking about the other day. Why is Ricardo Holman back? Why is Preston Zachman back? It's because they weren't NFL prospects, right? I mean, realistically, we're talking about, I think, good college players for sure. And I think Rico's going to play in the league. But we both know if he got a certain NFL grade, he would have left. I think
that's
there's
fair.
an element of,
I think it's fair, but I would say that we were a 5-win team last year with basically the similar roster. Yes, there's Luce who lost Hunter Roller. There's some pieces on the offensive line we lost, but we should have beat Oregon. We were right there. We mailed in the Penn State game. I mean, and we got thumped by our rivals. I just don't. You're right. I'm definitely overrating them, but I'm just comparing it to last year and thinking we won 5 games with that roster last year. How could we not have improved? But
No, I agree with you. Actually, I agree with you on that. I think we did improve. And for all the talk of this year's schedule, last year's schedule was a beast too, and we won 5 games. We won 5 games with Braden Locke. We won 5 games with Ches and Tywee sharing the rock when I think we all thought it should have been maybe a little more yak and some of the young guys. We won 5 games with Will Pauling suddenly developing a Chuck Knobloch case of the yips where he couldn't catch the ball. We won 5 games with the worst TFL defense in the country. We won 5 games with iffy special teams. We won 5 games with a lot of issues with an offensive coordinator that, quite frankly, wasn't very good. So I agree with you, by the way, for the record. I agree with you. I think we are better. I don't think it's going to hit the floor. I think my floor is 5 as well, and I think we're going to exceed that. Last thoughts? Any last thoughts on this?
Man, I'm just excited. I really am excited. The countdown is kind of here, and we can look ahead to the fall. And I know there's a lot of trepidation, and we obviously did the show because there is a lot of this back and forth, and people are really worried. But I think in the end, I still very much believe in Luke Fickell. I really do. I still believe the same thing that I believed when he started, that he can take us to the next level. And I do think that there was a mistake made with Longo, for sure. And I do blame some of the end of years. You did a show about the end of the Paul Chryst sort of run and how the cupboard was sort of left bare. Like, I think all those things play into it. And now is the time that he's got his players, he's got his system, he's got his new OC. It's time to take a step. Show us on the field, and I believe that does happen.
Matthew Anderson says we're getting 8. Let's go, Matt. Like, I would love that, dude. We'll throw a party for getting 8. He also says the schedule is getting a little overrated. There's a whole lot of teams with completely unknown quarterback play, including Ohio State, where an Ohio State fan jumps into this. Tyler, who's playing quarterback for you guys? Like, what is happening there as we get a random Ohio State drop in? That's unusual. Coming back down from Park Place down to like what avenue are we on Monopoly right now? Ventura. If you don't know Monopoly, that Tyler's coming out of Boardwalk to drive down to like Oriental right now to hang out with us. Anyway, we're gonna wrap it there. He is Rajiv. I am Ryan. Thank you all so much for tuning into Locked On Badgers. A bunch more content coming up as always. Really do appreciate you. Tyler says it's gonna be Julian saying. Yeah, it does. I don't know if you even know it matters because you're throwing to Jeremiah Smith. I mean, what you and I could do that.
Yep.
On Wisconsin. Appreciate you guys, and we will definitely talk later.